Is personal development a scam? Do you really need to do your cold showers every morning, ice baths, wake up early, read a bunch of books, work with mentors and coaches, meditate, do affirmations? Is that needed for success? Could you become successful without it? Is it all just one big scam that is preached by people who, at the end of the day, just want to convince you that it's important so that they can make money? So you can buy their course, their program, their book, whatever it is that they have to sell. In this video, we're going to explore this question because I know that it is a question that has probably crossed your mind, as it has crossed my mind. And it's a tough question to find an answer to when you look online, you see so many people on different sides of the spectrum preaching different things. You've got people who've become massively successful who say they meditated and did affirmations and that's why they're successful. And others who are saying they woke up early and did ice baths and that's why they're successful. Others who'll say they read 1,000 books. And then you've got people all the way on the other side of the spectrum who'll say, I never read a book in my life, never woke up early, I take warm showers, and look at me, I'm successful. And you're like, well, who's right and who's wrong? And what's right and wrong for me? What do I do? What do I do? What do I need to do to bridge the gap between where I am and where it is that I want to be? And once you find an answer to this question, you'll start to make better decisions. You'll start to take better actions because I know that if I was to be, if I popped up as a genie and I said, hey, so and so, all you need to do is just read 100 books every single year for the next 5 years. And I guarantee you, whatever it is that you want to achieve is 100% going to be yours. You would probably do it because you would know the energy and time that you're putting into doing this very thing would create that result that you want. And you're probably willing to do whatever it takes. The reason why we don't read the books and we procrastinate and don't take the cold showers and don't do all of these things that we think we may need to do is because deep down inside, we're thinking to ourselves, are we just wasting our time? I mean, I've had that moment where I'm like, I should be working, but would it be a better use of my time to read a book? Oh, I've got this seminar I'm going to go to. Is it really worth the money? Is it really worth the time? Sometimes I'll turn on the cold shower and before I step underneath it, I'm just like, why am I doing this? Is this really going to make me successful? And these types of thoughts can lead you to stop doing these things, which could then have a massive negative impact on your success. So knowing why you're doing what you're doing and having conviction that personal development and the personal development you're doing is actually going to produce the result that you want is going to be fundamental for your long-term success. And that's why I thought it'd be worthwhile me recording an entire video exploring this topic. So sit back and relax. Let's dive right into this, dive deep into it, be a bit of a nuanced, esoteric type of video where we really try to break things down to first principles and explore the topic. And it might be something you may need to watch multiple times. And I'll do my best to really communicate my points. So let's start at a high level and begin with a story. When I was 19 years old, I was still studying full time at university to become a civil engineer. And I decided I wanted to make some extra money. So I asked my friend what they were doing to make money on the side. And someone would say cafe, restaurant. One of them said, I'm a private tutor. I was like, cool, how much money are you making? He's like, $500 a week. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And he's like, and I only do tutoring on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm like, that's perfect. And he's like, well, that's all you need to do, man. Just put up and advertise that you're doing private tutoring and get a couple students. I'm like, done. So I went on Facebook. I created a funny, fancy flyer on I can't even remember what PowerPoint. And then I put it up on my Facebook and I got 3 students as a result. Started making some money, but he was at 12 students a month and I became capped after my initial Facebook audience got exhausted. So I reached out to him and I said, hey man, what are you doing to get more students? And he's like, well, one thing you can actually do is sign up to a tutoring platform, a tutoring center, but an online company. And they'll do all the marketing and they'll essentially give you students and all you do is just pay them a commission from your hourly rate. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, the fact that they're going to get me students so easily is cool, but I was also really intrigued by the fact that they were going to make almost 50% of what I was going to make without actually having to physically be at the session and actually put that hour of their time. And I was like, wow, that's like passive income. I don't know, it's all I remember thinking. Oh, it's like passive income. Give me a sec. So thinking it was like passive income, I started to get intrigued. I started to get intrigued by the business model itself, and I started looking them up, seeking which platform I wanted to sign up to, and I just wasn't impressed. All these platforms were like old. There was no excitement. I didn't want to sign up to any of them. And then I just thought to myself, you know what? Why don't I just start the company myself? And I went in head first while studying full time at uni. 3 months later, I had launched my own tutoring company. The friend that I had shared the initial idea with me now was a tutor part of my own agency. And then I ended up dropping out of uni, pursued business full time. Haven't had a job since I was 19. And I went on to actually grow the tutoring company to 400 tutors Australia wide. And we sold the domain, tutorsaustralia.com.au, which I'd built to be, you know, top of Google on all the major tutoring related keywords, to a competitor. And then I ended up starting another company after that. So the question that I have for you is, why did we take such different paths? Is it because I'm just smarter than my friend? Well, no. Is it because I'm more hard? I work harder. I'm a harder worker. No. Is it because I'm more confident? Yes or no, right? The answer to a question like that is not binary. It's not black and white. It's very nuanced. It's very complex. Why didn't I? Why did we take such different paths? Well, how can you answer that question with a simple black and white answer? You can't. If you were to ask him, he may have said, well, I didn't want to start a company, didn't even cross my mind. I don't have the money for it. I don't have the time for it. I don't have the passion for it. I didn't believe I could. I didn't even think it's something I could do. No, you should wait until you've graduated and worked for someone before you think about starting a business. I didn't have enough experience. There are so many different ways that he could have answered that question. And even after he answered that question, that the answer that he would have given to that question would have such a massive complex backstory that you wouldn't even be able to scratch the surface with getting an answer to that. It's like, well, I didn't have the confidence for it. And then you dive deep into that, and that would probably come from childhood and what he went through, and you know, his upbringing and the experiences that he had, which all led him to the moment where he saw another company that offered private tutoring, as a service, and he thought to just become a private tutor rather than starting the company itself. Now, if you were to ask me why I decided to start the company rather than work for the company, I'd say because I had absolute faith in myself that I could do it better than them. And I didn't have any doubt that I could start a business. And I thought I'd be able to get the experience that I needed. And I was willing to work hard, and I was passionate about it. Now, I would have given you really surface level answers like that. But the reality is, growing up, my dad threw me into karate when I was 4 years old. And then by 6 or 7 years old, I was a black belt. And then by 11 years old, I was an Australian champion. And I had competed, I had won, and I had lost, and I had performed in front of people. I had experienced failure, and I had experienced success. I had been the underdog, and, you know, come out of the shadows and beat people who previously I've lost against and who destroyed me. So I had all this experience of winning and losing, and for the most part being a winner and building my confidence. And my dad was such an amazing guy. And he may have done this unintentionally, but what he did contributed to me forming my own beliefs about myself, because he would always speak words of affirmation to me. I always remember growing up, my dad would say really positive words. You're going to be successful. You're going to be, you know, you're going to be rich. You're going to be this. You're going to be amazing, and you are amazing, and you are the champion. And he would call me a batal in Arabic, which means champion, and wahash, which means a beast. And I grew up with my dad talking and speaking these words to me. So now fast forward to 19 years old, and it's like, well, should I start this business? And I'm like, fuck yeah. The reason why I decided to take that step itself is built on so much complexity that you cannot provide binary black and white answers. And that itself is what's wrong with the question of whether personal development is a scam or not. Everyone is taking an approach to this question from a black and white, yes or no point of view. And that itself is what makes everyone flawed and everyone wrong all at the same time. Those who preach that you need to do cold showers and you've got to do your ice baths and you've got to read books are wrong. And those who say that you don't need to read and you don't need to do personal development are also wrong, because they're all providing their own subjective, personal, anecdotal experience on what is right and wrong. But in reality, they don't even truly understand the complexities of why they act the way that they act. And I'll give you another example. As I started creating content online, I've worked with people and I've had people reach out to me and be like, Leo, how do you find the motivation to work? Because sometimes I struggle getting out of bed. Sometimes I just procrastinate. Sometimes I don't feel like working and it's hard for me to get into work. And I've always struggled to answer that question. And I never really understood why. And the conclusion that I arrived to ignorantly was that everyone else was just lazy. Like, you're just lazy. I'm a hard worker. You're just lazy. How can you not get up and work? I don't understand that. I've never struggled with that. I've never struggled with showing up and doing the work, no matter how I felt. So you just must be lazy. That's all. Now, I'll call myself on that. I'll call myself out on that because I was wrong to think that way. I was wrong to think that way. And it's not that I regret thinking that way. I was wrong. I didn't even understand why I was able to just show up and do the work. But then if you look into my childhood, I would remember times where I'd cry and be like, oh, Dad, I really don't want to go to training today. I don't feel like it. And he would be like, feel like it. You don't not go to training because you don't feel like it. You go to training and that's it. That's that. And I would go. And so growing up, there are probably 100 times where I didn't want to go to training that my dad made me go. And so I just became accustomed and used to doing the work, even though I didn't feel like doing it. And so for me, the idea of waking up and not feeling like it and not working is crazy. It's not even, I don't understand it. It's not in my way of thinking. It just doesn't exist. And now I've understood why. For so many years, I've always shown up. I show up every day. Even when I'm not feeling well, I show up. And I might take that to an extreme. And my dad may have benefited me slightly from maybe giving me a day off here and there. We can discuss that. But all I can tell you is I myself didn't really understand why I had such a natural ability to show up and do the work. Other people would look at me and go, you're such a hard worker. I would go, I don't know any other way. So me working hard is not I wasn't overcoming anything. It was just it was natural to me. Waking up early was natural to me, you know. Sacrificing was natural to me. I remember I used to sacrifice my Sundays all the time. I'd have to go to sleep early and miss out on hanging out with my cousins because I had a karate competition the next day on a Sunday morning that I'd have to wake up early for. So that could even contribute to the fact that I'm okay with sleeping early and sacrificing to wake up early. So there's just so much of what makes me who I am that is because of my childhood, because of my background, because of my experiences. And even if I was to sit here and try to break apart the foundations which I have for the next 2 hours, I probably would not scratch the surface. And so I'm not going to even begin to try and analyze you. But what I will say is everyone has different foundations and everyone has a different starting point, and everyone has weaknesses and everyone has strengths. Now, if I was to answer the question, is personal development important? I would answer that by saying, it is important to an extent, right? Rather than yes or no, I would say it is important to an extent, and it's important for you to focus on personal development in the areas that you're weak at, so you can develop those areas and make them your strengths, so that you can become the character of the individual who's achieved the goals that you have. Now, think about it from this perspective. Where you are now and where it is that you want to be is all just character. We don't make the millions, so we don't become successful, then we don't like achieve success, then become successful. We become successful, then we achieve success. That's how it works. And if you want to look at an example, like let's say someone made $1 million from winning the lottery, so many studies out there prove that majority of the lottery winners end up broke because their characters aren't the characters of millionaires. That's just the reality. So what we want to do is chase a character. We need to chase a person. And when we're talking about bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be in terms of our circumstances, what we're really saying is we need to become the person who has achieved those goals, right? And so really what we're saying is we need to develop ourselves into that person. And so personal development by default becomes absolutely crucial. It's necessary. So the answer is yes, personal development is it's not a scam. It's absolutely important, but the extent to which you need personal development and what you need personal development for in your areas of life is subject to your background. It's subject to your own foundation. So it's actually subjective. That's why it's so easy to just get annoyed when you see people online, someone who's like preaching at you, hey man, get up and have a cold shower and have a cold bath. It's like, I don't need that, mate. I don't need that. So to stop preaching it as if I need that, objectively speaking. Oh, you should sit down and optimize your life and do, track what you're doing. Like I personally do that, but I wouldn't say everyone needs that, right? Just get up and, you look in the mirror and scream at yourself that you're amazing and you're going to get the work done so you can actually get the work done. I don't need to do that because I don't have problem with working. So it's subjective to you, but is it necessary? Of course it is. In the same way that, let's say someone wants to play basketball and you've got a kid who grows up by the age of 18 to be 6'7", genetically already thick, like not 6'7" and lanky, 6'7" and thick. This person, in order to become the best basketball player in their school or go to college or go to the NBA, all they really need to do is just lose weights. So go to the gym, lose weight, watch their food, and play basketball for the next 2 to 3 years, understand the fundamentals. And just by default, the default of them being 6'7" and genetically gifted, there's not much that they need to do to just become better than everyone else in their school, right? Now, what you would prescribe to that person in order for them to achieve their goals would be different to someone who was 5'8". In order for this 5'8" person to win the game of basketball, he would have to play a completely different game to the person who's 6'7". And that's essentially how you need to be thinking about personal development when it comes to business. Look at yourself. Look at where you are weak in and go and make those points of weaknesses strong. If growing up, you never had an issue with money and you believe you could have $10 million in your bank account, and when you have money in your account, you're able to see it build and stack, and it doesn't feel unfamiliar for it to be there. And the idea of being rich is not something you struggle with. You don't have imposter syndrome. You don't have sabotaging behavior. You're just okay with sitting money, sit there and save over time. Then you don't need to do work around overcoming limiting beliefs when it comes to finances. You may need to do work around doing hard things. So a cold shower for you would probably be a good idea because you'll strengthen your mind to do the things that you don't want to do, right? You may need to go and read a book on marketing and develop yourself marketing wise. But the person you're comparing yourself with, whose dad was an entrepreneur, who probably talked about marketing and sales through his upbringing in his childhood, who saw his dad, constantly buying new things, and maybe his dad once showed him his bank account with, $1 million in it. He grows up and he doesn't have a problem with being rich or doesn't have a problem with self-sabotage, and understands business to some extent and just feels like they're naturally gifted. It's like, no, it's come from somewhere. Trust me. There is no way you can go from where you are to where it is that you want to be without bridging the character gap. You would have had to get that knowledge somewhere. Life and business itself is really objective. You don't create a successful business unless you bring value to the marketplace. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It's really objective. You don't become a successful entrepreneur unless you understand sales, unless you understand marketing, unless you understand leadership, unless you understand customers and building good products. There is just no way it happens unless you are incredible at those things. Now, some people need to go and read 1,000 books to gain that knowledge. Others have a mentor, an uncle, a father who teaches them all of these things. Some people have a natural gift at just understanding human beings. Like their brain is just wired to understand psychology and they just know how to make people they just understand fundamentally how to get people, how to influence behavior, how to get people to do what it is that they want. And they learned that through watching and observing someone who was a master at it in their life, but they don't understand where that comes from. I hope, I'm thinking to myself now, like I've kind of, it's such a hard, it's so, it's actually really difficult to answer this question because the question itself is so nuanced. You're going to have to give nuanced, colorful answers. But the problem with nuanced, colorful answers is that they by default are not simple. And so if you walked away from this a little bit confused, it means you're thinking too binary. And it's probably a good idea that you listen back to this again because the answers are there. They are there. The answer to that question is there. And if it's not become clear, you're thinking too black and white. I hope this helps at least just one of you. And if I have helped at least one of you find the answer to this question, then that's mission accomplished. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And I look forward to exploring the next topic. Until next time.